going to do something a little bit different, I think. My thesis, if we could call it that, or argument, I suppose, is that we are far too wedded to an inadequate measurement framework when it comes to content and social and PR, and it has created quite an outcome-based way of thinking that permeates everything that we do. We're always thinking of the ROI. We kind of know the ROI of everything, but the value of not that much. And I think that's going to change quite soon, and we can prepare for that today. First of all, a little bit about me. So I've been working in digital for about 7 years. Started in-house in Barcelona, then moved to London, then Sydney, and then New York. I came over with a sales guy about a year ago to launch Crowd USA. And this reference might not mean much to people who don't live in New York, but there's an almost ubiquitous chain of coffee stores called Gregory's, and I feel like I'm owed almost damages for my likeness that's been used everywhere. And I go in every time and I point at my face and they don't give me free coffee, nothing. I have a t-shirt that has this logo on it, which makes me look like a raging narcissist, but I just like the coffee. So I work for a company called Crowd, and I won't dwell too much on the whole sales pitch of our company, but the idea behind it is we started in 2011, and our staff is from account manager upwards, so we don't really have junior staff in-house, and the idea is that our clients get access to the best expertise so we can focus on things like the strategy and the bits that matter and building the client relationships. But the way we do that is that we have a network of around 600 digital experts who we can pull in to help us with, whether it's a finance project or PR or whatever. And we can draw on those levels of expertise, but we don't have to pay the overheads to have those people full time. So we facilitate all of that through our own technology, and I'm happy to answer questions about that afterwards, as you would imagine. But first of all, I'm going to start with Gustave Le Bon. And in 1895, you can correct me if that's wrong, I think that's correct, he wrote that the greater part of our daily actions are the result of hidden motives which escape our observation. And 121 years later, that is still completely true, but it troubles us because what we focus on is the daily actions. We know what those are. We can see if someone likes content, but we don't know if they like it. We know that they like it because it's a metric, but we don't actually know if they've enjoyed it. And the troubling bit for us is that it escapes our observation. Anything that escapes our observation we don't really like because we have this utopian vision that everything's measurable. We can tell you the ROI of every piece of content. We know exactly what's going on. And that's okay, but we need to accept that we're kind of missing a trick there. And I've got an obligatory stat, 5% of content attracts 90% of engagement. So something's going wrong here. The reality of content interactions is that people are seeing something that we produce and they like it or they get angered by it or worst of all, they're bored by it. But we report kind of the way we do here on the right-hand side. 3 different metrics. PR might say it's been a huge success. SEO would say, well, it hasn't actually been a success because our rankings didn't go up. Social media might say, well, actually, we haven't increased our following, so it hasn't been a great campaign. There's nothing really unified about that. And the problem is that we start from that point and then we build the campaign. Also, how would we do this differently? This is the best we have, so we use it. I mean, how would we possibly measure the subconscious, which is what we're talking about here? It seems like an impossible task, except that this rather spooky patent was granted to Google not that long ago. And they're planning to train ranking models based on biometric parameters and satisfaction value. Before you even know if you like content, Google's going to know, because they'll be measuring your blink rate, the level of twitching in your eyes. It's a bit scary, but I think that this holds the key to how we might go about a more unified way of approaching strategy. Because there's nowhere to hide here. We can't turn up as an SEO team and say, it was a great campaign. It was a really good campaign. We now rank first for whatever. Well, actually, we'll be looking at these sorts of metrics and saying, well, once people saw the content, they didn't like it. They didn't. I mean, objectively, we can tell that they didn't. But if we start from this point of view and say what we're actually trying to get is genuine user engagement, we all know that, but the reason we don't do it is because we can't measure it. The future is that we will be able to measure it, so we might as well start thinking that way and start with the general questions, like what are we trying to achieve, more content, why are we producing this, where's it going to go, and from there we can draw in our specialist skills. What does it mean today? It's already happening. I mean, RankBrain is based around exactly this premise. It's about engagement factors, it's about clickstream data. This is already happening. Digital PR and SEO are inextricably linked. I mean, brand mentions are somewhere in the future going to be as important as an actual followed link back to your site. So Google is monitoring these things, and it will reward people who think in this, I guess I would say, slightly more enlightened way. So I actually think even the use of emojis by brands is a way of accepting that there's a communicative gap here, that a tacit acceptance that we are trying to create an emotional interaction with people, and that the rational framework of language isn't necessarily creating that. So the takeaway from this is that we should harness the specialist skills. There's nothing wrong with being specialists. We all need that, but it should be harnessed towards a general goal. And I think specialism itself breeds an inherent bias. Quite like the little phrase, to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail, because it reminds me of some meetings I've gone to as an SEO person, and I haven't consciously thought the only thing I want out of this content meeting is likes or links or whatever. But it does shape everything that I say whenever I go into that room. I know that this content campaign, for me, is about getting links back to the site. It's about increasing domain authority. And that shapes everything. That's all I want out of it. So we're not really going to do as well as we could. And I'm not going to collaborate as well as I might with everyone else. I'm throwing myself under the bus here because I could use a lot of other examples of people I've seen, but I might as well accept the blame. And the reason we're not getting there is because we are tied to this idea. And I think we apply the pay-per-click model far too frequently. Whether we do it formally or informally or conceptually, we do think there has to be an instant return on things. And that's why people keep throwing money into AdWords. There may be diminishing returns, but we know what the returns are, and that's what matters. Why invest in a brand campaign? Because it's fluffy metrics. I've been guilty of saying that as well. Fluffy metrics is that oxymoron that we all hate. But they won't be so fluffy when Google starts measuring people's pulse rate and telling us whether they've actually liked the content. That's where we start to tie that together a little bit better. And our strategies are formed already. By the time we come to the table to discuss PR and SEO, we already know what our strategy is for the next 12 months, and we're not going to change it just because PR wants more eyeballs on the content. We're too far down the road already. We need to be discussing these things a little bit earlier. So I would say, as a main takeaway from this, that clicks, shares, and rankings, and all of those metrics should be a reward for a job well done, but they shouldn't be the goal of everything that we do. As a kind of rule of thumb, if we can stop asking the question that SEOs in particular will ask, so how can we improve search performance with content? How am I going to use this content to jam some keywords in and get some links back? And start thinking, well, how can we improve user engagement? Both in the sense of actions and in terms of those motives that our friend Le Bon was talking about in the late 19th century. We need to be thinking that way. The best we have at the moment is to look at the measurement framework we have, and it's reasonably fit for purpose, but we need to be thinking a little bit beyond that. And if we do that correctly, we're producing content that people are interested in, we're going to get reach for PR, the rankings will come from SEO, and we'll get the shares on social media because we're doing things well. We want to be part of that 5% of content that's getting 90% of the engagement. I've been thinking about this quite a lot, particularly over the last kind of 6 to 12 months. And I've been lucky enough that some of our clients will trust us to be that, dare I say, sort of enlightened voice, that will facilitate these conversations between the different channels. And this is the sort of framework that we use. So I've actually been banned by 2 of my clients now. I don't think it's a personal criticism, but so I don't want to hear SEO in this meeting. I don't want to hear you talk about it, because the second you do that, we've kind of lost the audience. They think that you want something out of this. Don't talk about it. So we talk about campaign goals. What are we looking to achieve? If we don't know why we're creating content, if we're creating it because we've heard we should, and the Content Marketing Institute says keep creating it, we're not going to get anywhere. I mean, there's enough out there. There is enough of it out there. So if we think, user-first approach, all of that sort of thing that we all already know, then move to unified messaging, we're still not talking about channels here. So we're talking about themes, we're talking about audiences, we're talking tone of voice, all of these very broad questions. And I would actually have this as one session. Then we'll go away, put together a bit of a game plan based around that. And it's only once we get to stage 3 that we start thinking, right, so how can PR help us? How can social media use their strengths? Because specialism is what is going to get us towards our goal. We know that, but it's only at this stage that we should start talking about that. And the medium and the message should be in constant dialogue. So if we have a content campaign and we know that we want to promote it for PR, well, that might be long-form content. We're using Facebook, it might be image-based. Instagram, obviously going to be image-based. LinkedIn, we might want to use some of the longer-form content. So there should be a constant dialogue between the form and the content. And it should logically flow. By the time we start asking the questions of, well, what's going to look like, what's going to make this successful? What does good look like? The metrics should be obvious, actually, because we know what we want to achieve. We know what each channel is going to do to help us get there. So the metrics should be quite clear. I mean, it may be guide downloads, it could actually be increased following on Facebook, but that's where we should bring those metrics in. If we start here, which is what we do quite often, everything else is going to fall by the wayside. So search, social, and content, to bring this back a little bit more to the actual title of what I'm meant to be talking about, the three different phases of planning, execution, and promotion. There are different things that each one should contribute. And I don't think as SEO professionals that we should be ashamed of the fact that we are experts when it comes to technical expertise. That's what we do. If there's a new microsite going to launch, we need a technical SEO guy who's going to sit there with the developers, and we do that quite often. Social can bring social listening, content, a lot more of the audience data. And at every stage that these teams are doing these things, they may be doing them at different agencies. They should still have that written game plan, what we're trying to achieve overall. If they go into any of this and they can't tell me or whoever is facilitating the conversation how what they're doing is going to help us meet that goal, we pretty much scrap it, because there's no point. It has to be quite tailored. The form has to follow the function when we're doing something like this. And from an SEO standpoint, and I'll get on to an example to make this a little more concrete, it's the basic things like the internal linking strategy. We can get a load of PR links coming back to the site, but it's up to us to channel that in the right way. And we can try and be a jack of all trades in SEO. Everything's been bundled up and gone to different directions, but there's still a huge amount of value in this, and I'll show how we've done this recently. So PR, it's been an interesting one over the last few years. I know Chris is going to talk about this in more detail. SEO agencies, we've got pretty good at creating content, but not necessarily so good at promoting it. And where the PR agencies come in is that they are experts at this. We have a lot of people in that network I referenced earlier. We have 4 people who are former heads of PR, and they talk a different language. They actually do. When we try and talk to them, they have a different frame of mind in everything that they do, what success looks like to them, and it's a bit alien to us. But there's nothing wrong with that. We don't all need to be the same. Actually, we play our role as the agency creating the content, and the PR agency knows how to promote that correctly, how to meet some of those fluffier metrics that will become decreasingly fluffy as time goes by. We use BrightEdge quite a lot for this. The campaigns feature is one that I've used for the example that's going to come up, because we need to kind of ring fence what we're out to achieve. So for us, in the instance I'm going to look at, it was small business insurance. What we can do as well is that we can assign tasks to different people within that, so that we can facilitate that workflow within one area, because it's so easy to have a big meeting with everyone around the table, and then we all go back to our different agencies or even our different departments, and we stop talking at that stage. So this is one of the main features that we would use, and then the dashboards will be customized, but the executive dashboard is the main one that we use. And I think the crux of my argument actually today is that the CMO dashboard is kind of the holy grail for us. Why? I mean, because what that dashboard is actually trying to say is, did the work? Like, did we actually do what we were meant to do? Have we actually done anything? And if we can't answer that question easily, we've got a bit of a problem with our measurement framework, because that should be the easiest question to answer. And it's quite often the hardest one. So coming back to this sort of framework, won't dwell on these things for too long, but the aim with our business insurance client was to raise awareness of new policies, but also to awaken in the consciousness of people that didn't even know that they needed insurance, that they might want to engage in getting some insurance. So then we went through the different areas of the strategy, and the idea was to be soft on the sales angle, because you can lose people so quickly. From the tactical initiatives, we sent someone in to work from their office during the launch, our technical SEO heads, and the PR guys went off, and they used a lot of, we got links from Inc. and Entrepreneur and Slate and all of these sorts of publications. On the right-hand side, one I do want to focus on is actually this. I think we'll be sending these presentations around, I assume. There's a kind of plug-in for Google Analytics that allows us to see scroll depth. And it's one of my favorite tools from the last kind of year, because we get clicks and we think that's quite good, but you can set different increments. So you can say, I want to know how many people scrolled 65% of the way through this content. Where did they get to? And you can tie that in with some CRO software as well, but it's quite useful because it's a GA plugin, so you can see it pretty easily. But search visibility for us in DataCube was kind of the be-all and end-all. We came up with this campaign. It was based around the company's kind of umbrella campaign, which was Encourage Courage. So there was the Points of Courage small business stories, which was a partnership with Slate, which was obviously pretty useful for us. We produced some infographics and studies alongside that to do with levels of embezzlement, and that was quite good because it differed by geography, so you could go to local newspapers and say, well, actually, in the South, there's much higher rates of X or Y. And they've got a bit of a journalistic angle then, so they're quite keen to share that content. and infographics like how to set up Google business listings based around search volumes, I suppose. We gave them a dedicated outreach manager, PR director, created all of this content, and by thinking a little bit broader, we got back to these metrics that are the best that we have at the moment, but hopefully won't be for too long. And the campaign launched in kind of May, June. We saw an 88% visibility improvement, 6-point domain authority increase from 54 to 60, which is obviously quite good. But the important bit and the really challenging bit was that we saw a 30% sales increase year on year. The reason the reason that's important, I think everyone in the room knows why that's important. That's what we're kind of tasked with. But the visibility that we got wasn't just how to do X, why you should do Y, 5 reasons you need insurance. It was about channeling a lot of that PR kind of energy that went into the campaign through to the product pages. It was by restructuring sections of the site so that we had main content that might say small business insurance, but creating 12 pages of supplementary content, updating the sitemap with that content sitting underneath that, nested there, so that we look like an authority within that area. And then why are people talking about us? Where are they talking about us? Well, Slate are talking about our Encourage Courage campaign. They're linking back. We're linking into a small business insurance section. We should be the authority for that. So we ranked first for that term, and it's obviously done rather well for us. In summary, I'm a huge fan of this image. I'll crowbar it in anywhere I can, because I think it kind of backs up this point. Because to me, it kind of visualizes this idea that there's nothing wrong with having different specialisms. And then you have the slightly utopian vision at the end where our diverse strands come together and turn into a beautiful tree with a bird on a branch. But the concept, I think, holds true. We shouldn't be thinking about target metrics like likes and links and traffic as the reason that we're doing something. If we're creating content because we want likes or links, we will be part of that 95% of content that gets no engagement. Or I think it was Jim was saying yesterday, 70% of content never even gets seen. You can fall into that black hole very, very easily. So we need to think beyond immediate interactions too. I mean, people may actually like your content without liking it. We assume uniformity within the metrics. All likes are created equal. A like is a good thing. We got 200 likes on this, and we can divide that by the money we spent, and we know the ROI on it. It's $1.25 per like. It's a really broken way of thinking. And although Google may be a couple of years away from measuring heart rate and blink rate and flush rates and all of these things, they are going to get there, and it's how we should be thinking. Marketing has always been about this. People have been talking about it since the 19th century in these terms, but we've lost our way because we're too wedded to the idea that because it's digital, it has to be measurable. We have to know the ROI of everything. We can facilitate collaboration through some of the shared reports that I've measured. I think project management is a bit of a boring side of this, but actually having centralized project management ensures that people will work together. You can assign tasks that way, and it helps quite a lot. And we need to set expectations. I mentioned the insurance client, and we went into that and said, we're not going to see any returns off this for 3 months. And if that's not what you need as a business, we'll do something else. But there's no point creating the idea that we're going to get ROI from day one. And as a kind of main takeaway and the main crux of my argument today, I think the next area of content measurement is actually going to allow us to attract those subconscious metrics that drive everything that we do. Before people even know whether they've liked content, we're going to know it through content measurement dashboards that are going to look very different to what we're looking at today. It gets a bit sort of Minority Report, but it is actually going to go that way. The only way we're going to get there, though, is through collaborating from day one, by thinking general. The first 2 stages of that 4-step framework should be completely general. And once we get to stage 3 and stage 4, we bring in specialist skills, but always with the aim of meeting those broader business goals. And that is that. No, thank you very much.